So Mesoamerica, I chose Lady Shock's vision from the site of Yaxchilan. Yaxchilan. It has an accent. Did I put it? I should have put an accent over the A. So normally you accent the penultimate syllable, as in Spanish, the second to last, unless you've got an accent somewhere. And I messed it up. So Yaxchilan on the A. Her building is in such bad shape that we just picked some other buildings at the site to put in the image set to show you what Maya architecture looks like. So we have structure 40, which was for a king, her husband, Shield Jaguar II, same as Richard I and Henry VIII. There are a lot of the same repeated names in the Maya kings, first and second. And the building on the right is the one that is the most similar to what her building would have been. It's called structure 23 is her building. This is an image of structure 33. That's just a detail for you, but if you're looking it up and you're going, well, why can't I find a picture of 23? It's not, it's just.
But it would have looked like 33?
Yeah, three doors and a roof comb. All that stuff up there is like a sculpture, a planar sculpture. This is the roof, this is the top of the rooms. And then this is the corbel, do we have anything to write with on the whiteboard? Well, I can just spell it for you, C-O-R-B-E-L. You're probably used to that architectural term. It's that V, just two parts that come together. It's not, quote unquote, a true arch. It is just taking one stone a little further out than the last in a big heavy wall until they meet and you can put a lintel on the top of them. There's not a keystone that's holding forces, but there's a lot of force. There's a lot of just weight. And you don't make a lot of interior space with a corbel. But they didn't really want a lot of interior space. That's another thing that's different from the old world. They weren't going for a lot of internal living inside. Native Americans tend to live outside and just come inside for sort of secret things or to sleep. And in this environment, you can pretty much do that. Oh, thank you.
I'm always just trying to make connections so I can remember, but I'm thinking of a Greek temple versus a Roman basilica. The center of a Greek temple was smaller and only the most,
privileged.
The god. And the god and the priest.
Yeah, so that internal architecture architecture in the Americas is more sculptural. You're sculpting, pyramids are like sculpting large and big plazas, and then you're sculpting little dark places for, the priests and the shamans to sort of disappear to and have their rituals in. So a corbel, you can leave it zigzag like that, or of course you can just plaster it over and make it like that. But it wasn't an architecture based on harnessing a lot of internal space. And all this up here, that sort of wiggly part, is called a roof comb. It's just a big slab of sculpture. And it makes the building look taller, makes you more important, puts you up into the sky. And the sky is good. Sky is always good.
Because they're leaning.
It's really it's like this. It's a thin flange.
But what's on the back side of it to hold it up?
It's balancing. It's a little bit trapezoidal, so that it's using weight.
Okay.
So the architecture just uses the weight of stone, and but they can collapse. So structure 23 has mostly collapsed because they didn't. It's heavy, etc. Yaxchilan is called the split sky place because that's not a picture at Yaxchilan, but a kid couldn't find one on the internet, but there are two hills across the river. The site is on the inside of that bend, on the inside of the bend of the Usumacinta River, which of course a river is a superhighway for them. This is jungle. Oh, I don't want to hurt your. So yeah, we've got the accent on Yaxchilan. The site is here, looking across the river and seeing two hills like this that split the sky. So the name of the place, and this is the name, the hieroglyph for Yaxchilan. See those two bulbs like that? That's the split sky. The other is phonetics and syllables and different things like that.
Standing again when you see that.
Where the little arrow is here, and you're looking across here.
Out across the river and then it's.
Across the river, and there's two mountains, and it splits the sky. And they put it right where they did so that on the solstice, the sun would be right. They positioned themselves so that the sun would be right in between the two. There's a lot of astronomical orientation in the Americas, and it's a good, we were conscious of that in the committee to make sure that there are some cross-cultural things. You know, Stonehenge, of course, is the main one that you can do a nice comparison about solstices. You got to teach them what a solstice and an equinox, and you know, do want to go over that or not?
You know, we do have the sun tunnels in Utah. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
All right.
we can also do that.
So solstices are when the sun is either the furthest north or the furthest south in the sky. And every day of the year, the sun comes up a little bit. If it's down in the south, it goes under, seems to us it goes under, and comes up just a little bit further north. So they probably don't even recognize that. But if you're in a mountainous place, you can see, you can use the silhouette of the mountains to see it moving. And so when it's down at the south, it is the shortest day, and when it's at the north, it's the longest day. So that's the solstice, and it makes it naturally makes 4 points, the sunrise and the sunset on solstice and solstice. That makes 4 points. So 4 is not only north, south, east, west, cosmic directions, it's the sun makes 4 points. And then the indigenous people always point to the center point as the 5th point. So a quincunx, 1, 2, like 5 on a dice, is a cosmogram. The solstices and basically the center is sort of, if you just stood in the middle and watched it, you'd see the whole thing exactly. It'd be even if you stood on the center dot of the dice.
So which solstice does it appear in the middle? Is it both? Or?
The middle is the equinox. When you're,
I mean in between the two hills for Yaxchilan.
oh, it's yeah, I think it's the June one. I think it's the longest day. But that's a good question. You might be able, if you remind me, if you email me, remind me, and I'll make sure of that. And that building, structure 40 that I said was for the king, the sun comes right in the middle door, and he can sit on his throne, and he's completely bathed in light on that day. Ta-da! Yeah, the king. So.
It's also true of Egyptian, some of the pyramids.
Right.
Light goes through.
And that's that whole thing about organizing yourself in relation, your architecture in relation to the world. So this is the equinox, they're even. So that happens twice a year through the middle point. And actually in Aztec symbolism, this is also precious, the word for precious, the concept of preciousness, the 5 dots. Precious dots, yeah, preciousness.
And that's in the Maya script.
Aztec, yeah. It's hard to keep them straight. Sorry, I know. What were we saying? Let's see, let's go on. So it's a very complicated site, and you'll see good and bad versions of but I like this particular one because it shows the topography. Structure 40 for the king is on the top of the hill. Gee, hierarchy, right before your very spatial eyes. So this is just to help them read a site. You say, what are all these lines? You know, and if they've never seen a topographic map, you get them a topographic map of, you know, Salt Lake Valley or, you know, whatever, that's something they can relate to. So the king is here, and then the sun stuff, and his queen's building is down below. It's kind of straight down below him, you know, but it's down lower. But there's a whole building for his queen, and that's pretty rare. And another of our mandates was to have more women, if not women artists, at least, you know, women imagery and powerful women. So Lady Shock is a good comparison with, you know, Marie de Medici. You've got those Rubens, the Rubens series of her. You've got Juana Sur in the colonial, the nun in the colonial Mexican painting. There's some in there's something in the Asian.
Oh, the burial.
Yeah.
Lady Di. Yeah, Lady Di.
Mm-hmm. So just, you know, make yourself a list of the women, and they'll bound to be some year there's going to be a gender
Do you
one.
mean that it's rare within the Maya world to have
Yes.
a temple for the queen?
Yes, it
Even
is.
in the Maya, okay.
They're often shown with their husbands and doing stuff,
But Lady Shock is.
but Lady Shock is super important. She was Shield Jaguar's aunt. Okay. Again, like Egypt. So this is showing you a map without the topography, and you might want to show them, you know, you would think this was flat, and it's completely different without the topography. So relating to the site, relating to nature, relating to the environment, using the environment to be meaningful, and everybody has to climb up the hill to get to the king, you know. So try to use experience, of course, you know, as you lead them through how would you experience this place. And everybody, these other buildings were built by other kings over time. So they're constantly building in the same place and not with a huge plan. You can tell that it's not, you know, they're not making a grid or anything like that. They're going with the topography and the world, and they're each putting themselves, and that's more like a city-state mentality, right?
Are they tearing anything down when they rebuilding?
They build on top of, actually Structure 40 and Structure 41 were used by several kings, so you can reuse daddies and granddaddies in your dynasty. They're not always your, you know.
They're not trying to get rid of someone that's there before.
No. They don't erase everybody else and start over, because it's a sacred place. If it's where the sun comes and between the hills and all that, and you're around the bend of the river, and up the hill, it's just got all these great features. It's very much like Maya sites and Inca sites are kind of like the siting of Greek sites, you know, in natural basins for theaters and with a beautiful view that you see from here and there, you know. Okay, Sunion, you know, looking out onto the wine dark sea, all that kind of stuff.
You know, one other thought for comparison, but I don't know if you guys used it, was Isis and Osiris in the Book of the Dead.
Well,
I'm just thinking of a woman who appears to have equal power or shares power.
But this is nobles. These are royalty, not
gods.
divinities. Yeah. Do we need a break? Do you want a break?
You were saying something about how this was the first time that a woman was depicted doing a religious.
No. It's a building dedicated to her as the queen.
But I was talking about that. Sorry, later on, I guess the lintel.
The lintel.
Is that
Well,
the first time that we know of, or is that not?
there are images of women, and women do occasionally rule. You would have to read. It's like reading a gossip sheet, you know. In Palenque, there was a woman who ruled for a little while, you know. And sometimes it's just because their son is too young. Once in a while, it seems like they are ruling on their own. So it's a subtext.
But is it the first time that a woman was shown doing a religious ceremony? Is what I was told. But I don't know if that's true.
Yes,
I'd have to think about that. It's pretty late. This monument, well, the building went up in 725, and the Maya are about done in 900. So it's pretty late, and I can't imagine that it's the first one. But I'm not a Mayanist, and that's a very, very esoteric. You know, you need to read hieroglyphics and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to see whether it's the summer solstice. Well, summer doesn't mean anything. The June solstice, because there's two seasons, wet and dry, right? That's something that kids are like, well, what about the fall? It's like, well, there isn't a fall. June at Yaxchilan.
And while you're writing, what about Hatshepsut? Would that be something you would compare here as a woman ruler? Or as a
She
woman
didn't
with
rule,
power?
though. She didn't rule,
She had a
but
temple.
yeah, but she had a lot of power. first woman
Why
in
did I think
ritual.
oh, you mean?
Lady Shock.
Lady Shock.
Shock.
Got it.
Yeah. So here's
Royalty.
Yeah.
here's the gossip sheet from the 7th century. The guy's name, Shield Jaguar II. You can read all this, but that's pronounced Itzamnach Baalam II. When you have an apostrophe, you do uh-oh, Baalam, like that. Baalam. Baalam means jaguar. Baalam, 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 jaguar. And Itzamnach is actually a divinity. It's really not Shield, but that he's just gotten that moniker. It's the first shaman, the first great divine shaman.
He's 95 years old.
Amazing when most people lived a third of that. The lifespan was in the 30s.
Oh, see,
So
what?
nutrition was not a problem.
Well, they knew how to nixtamalize corn. Nixtamalizing corn, a wonderful word. If you like stuff about food, Sophie Coe, C-O-E, wrote a number of books about food. Just look, she's got an unusual enough name, Sophie, P-H-I-E-C-O-E. Foods, can't remember the titles. Nixtamalizing corn, if you just eat corn, you get very little protein. But you use lime, so you know a tortilla, you can smell a little and that. You use lime and you soak it, and it does a chemical reaction that's called nixtamalizing. And then the protein goes way up, and you can absorb it, and you get calcium and all this other good stuff. And a whole culture can basically live on the 3 sisters, corn, beans, and squash. Call them the 3 sisters. That's what most people call them, corn, beans, and squash. And you need to do the process. And you'd still get a lot of cavities. You're going to have bad teeth because there's so much sugar in corn. And you grind it on a metate, M-E-T-A-T-E, metate. That's a stone grinding table. And you get little bits of stone, and it crunches up your teeth, and then you get cavities. And so probably Shield Jaguar didn't have any teeth left, but.
He was
The
very
same thing happened in Egypt with their foods. They lost teeth because of the grinding.
Yep, it's a problem. So one of his wives had the heir. His aunt might have been too old, or they might have never had sex. I don't know, they didn't tell me. But his aunt, Lady Kabal Shuk, we call her Lady Shock. It means shark, which is easy. Nice, you know, similar to ours. She was higher status than him. He married her because he got more status from her. But she was either infertile or whatever. So he built Structure 23 maybe to appease her because he declared his other wife's son the heir. And she was pissed off. She wasn't the heir. You know, she hadn't produced an heir. So it's the same. I like these details of the lives because they do make it parallel to our gossip about the Medicis, or, you know, who these people and Van Gogh in his ear and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's just kind of, these are real life dramas that take place in this area. The Structure 23 had a nickname, the Beehive, a beehive of activity, or there's lots of, I don't know, women talking or whatever. And also kind of like the center, kind of a central place. And she and he were both buried there. So for him to be buried there meant, you know, he really was allying himself with her status and her, and they found hundreds of little obsidian knives, little slices of obsidian, which is volcanic glass, which are very, very sharp. They still use them for some kinds of eye surgery. They use obsidian. So I put down some books. And there are 3 lintels on this building. And they go, the center one is the one that shows her vision, the central door. Okay, this is important. The left-hand one, this is lintel 24. The left-hand one is lintel 24. The center one is lintel 25, which is the required one.
Which is this one right here on the next.
Yeah, the next slide. And lintel 26 is on the right. So they were just numbered arbitrarily by archaeologists, going left to right. But in terms of the dates that are being commemorated in the 3 lentils, 26 is the latest. The one on the right is the latest. The one in the center is the first in time. It's an event. 25, the one we're going to concentrate on, is the earliest because it's the day he acceded to the throne, Shield Jaguar II. And lentil 24 is in the middle time-wise. Want me to go over that again? Okay. So what that shows is that the center is the most important. The center is first. It's not a linear left to right reading like Westerners. The center is what's most important and first, and then you go to one side and you go to the other side. And I think you would go to the left because the direction in Native American is counterclockwise. So if you think of first, second, third, you're going counterclockwise in a spatial thing. Wait a minute. Yeah, you're right. I guess you could go the other way.
Go the other way.
Yeah, anyway, it's usually counterclockwise. They were all put up at the same time. They were all put up in 725 with the building. The events are from 681, which was his accession to the throne for lentil 25 in the middle. And then 28 years later, whatever that is lentil 24. It was an anniversary 28 years later. And I don't know the date of the last one, but it's late in his career. So it's day of accession, a very important anniversary, and then a very late thing, 25, 24, 26. Okay. On top of that, if you want to see a ritual sequence of what you do in a ritual, it goes 24 and then 25. Okay, that's the complication. This is 24 on the left. In any given royal ritual with bloodletting, you do the bloodletting first, which is what she's doing. She's running, and you'll see in the literature thorns on a rope. Now that we found all those obsidian knives in with her, we pretty much think these are little bits of obsidian that are on a rope, and she's pulling it through her tongue. And that's to bleed from her tongue. Women already bleed from other places, so she is bleeding, and there's an analogy, of course, with the mouth and the girl parts. She is bleeding from her mouth as a ritual thing, because it's not ritual to have your period. It's good, but it's not ritual. It is implied that he has bloodlet from his penis. Can you see where her hand is? Her little pinky is pointing. There's her hand with fingernails, and that's her little pinky right there.
Pointing out?
Yeah, like right there. Can you see it? Right there. Right where he's standing, where his penis would be behind his loincloth. And it says in the hieroglyphics that he has already let blood. So men took stuff and they pierced their penis, probably in imitation of women's periods, so that they would bleed from that part of their body too, from their fertile part. I'm sorry, guys. It's not pleasant.
Cactus spines usually.
Yeah, well, there are perforators. The Maya actually carved little pointy things. It's time to go to the bathroom. Didn't happen all that often. Not everybody's doing it. It's a royal obligation. Royalty does it. Royalty. You know? Because, why do you think, from stuff I've been talking about? You're giving your life force, and the pain itself shows more dedication, more, you know. It's easier than just,
People, that the royal has an obligation to the people.
I'm doing this for everybody. And of course, it does have to do with fertility, and it's liquid. So it's not semen, but it's all this blood is also rain. So if you can make rain from your body, you as the king and the queen are responsible for keeping the rain coming. That's your main responsibility. The rainy season comes when it does, everything grows, you survive the dry season. So it's the royal duty to do this. And he's holding a torch because it's nighttime. That shows that we're in a nighttime ritual, which is when shamanic rituals always take place. Bloodletting can give you visions. Blood loss, if you lose enough blood, and all these same ways of doing it provoke the same brain waves and stuff scientifically. So you can drink some horrible brew, you can dance all night and not eat for days, you can take bloodletting and you're going to get the same sequence often that will happen in your head. Yeah.
Would these have been painted?
Yes, painted completely blue.
All blue?
Blue, all blue.
So they wouldn't do different colors for
Nope.
different things, just...
Now, as far as we can tell, what we've got left is blue on everything. It's called Maya blue. It's a particular type of clay. If you look it up, capital M Maya and capital B blue. Did you ever hear? Yeah.
Wow.
And you can, it's
Is it similar to the Asian blue?
Argentonite or something, you know, there's a name of the clay. And you put some indigo from the indigo plant in it. It makes a beautiful sky blue. And that's what's most precious is blue and green, jade and water and sky and that color system, preciousness. Because that 5 point also means jade and preciousness, as I said, for the Aztec. And these are at the British Museum, the two, 24 and 25. They're not all that big. They're like about that big. So they're incredibly finely carved. I mean, they're stunning. They give you chills when you look at them. They're so beautiful. And you can see a little bit of the blue that's left. This one is signed by the artist. It was really hard to not have this one and 25, and I would teach them together. But just make sure that they understand which one they're required to do. It's signed by the artist right down here, this. It's just scratched into the surface. It's the name, the 4 glyphs that name the person who carved it. And this little bit of hieroglyphics is related to her. Lady Shock is letting blood. And this big one is related to him. Now pay close attention that the hieroglyphs, they start with dates, they go across from left to right, and then they go down in a little, if there's more of them, they make a, they make a little L going this way. And in this, when she bloodlets, her blood drops are falling on pieces of paper. They're fig tree bark. They're not papyrus or our kind of paper, but they're fig tree bark in a basket. And that shows that she has bloodlet. And what you do next ritually, you burn the paper with the blood on it. It becomes smoke. Smoke goes up and disappears. It talks to the spirits. It's spiritual. Incense, it's supposed to go up and reach the spiritual level. So here he is with his big fat thighs. See how nice and fat he is? Oh, he's so plump and juicy.
So, and is she placed lower than him? Is that-
She's kneeling, yep.
Does it just kind of show that his provenance?
Yep. And it's a compositional so that you can get the torch in and stuff like that. They loved big noses like this. This was beautiful, considered extremely beautiful to have an almond-shaped head, which they did do, bound the head of the baby. It doesn't hurt. Their bones are soft. It doesn't hurt. They made any shape they wanted. All of the Native American people, most of them, shaped the head in some way or another. Big old nose like that. Okay, so here's the one that's required, but you need to show that one to show what happens in a ritual. Here she is in the same position, and here's a basket with blood dot stuff in it. That's probably her husband's. If the ritual sequence, remember this isn't the same day, 24 and 25 isn't the same day, they're at different times, but the ritual sequence is you have to get the blood, and then you have the vision from the blood loss. So there's a basket here, and there's a basket in her hand. See it right there? in her hand. There's the basket and the blood dot stuff. So she's showing either a lot of bloodletting by herself or probably her husband's and hers. But it's her agency. She's having the vision. And the date of it is the day he acceded to the throne. So this is what's happening in one of those little, either in structure 23 in the dark, or, you know, we don't know. It doesn't say where it's happening. But she is getting the spiritual go-ahead for her husband to take the throne by having a vision. She's a shaman. She is acting as a shaman. She's being a spiritual intermediary for political power.
And is her role as his aunt a big deal here? Because would a queen normally have to get this go-ahead before?
We don't know. We don't know. This is such a singular monument, it doesn't show it any other time. Although at Yaxchilan, there are several scenes. They kept reenacting this later, doing the same kind of stuff later, in the dynasty. So this was sort of that. That might be where you got that. This is the first of a ritual event. And it could be. I'm going to have to look it up. But it is definitely at Yaxchilan, there's people imitating later on this same thing. So what is this? This is this vision serpent. This whole big thing. This is the open jaws of it. This is the eye. The eye is, and it's kind of looking up. That oval right there is the eye. Can you see that one in amongst all of the swirls and the calligraphy? And this is the snake. You know how the bottom, the ventral scales on a snake are like that? So it's twisting. It's twisting in space. It's writhing. It is the smoke of the burnt paper. But it is also her vision of a two-headed snake. I told you, 2 heads. This is the big head, and this is the little head. There's the jaw going up. See that? That is probably the eye right there. But that's the big jaw, and those are the fangs, you know, of a viper. A viper. It's not a real snake, because it's a vision. But if you want to get into real snakes, they molt every 6 weeks. And they start by peeling their head back, and they have 2 heads here, their old one and their new one. And as it goes down their body, at a certain point, they have a head at their tail and at their head. So it is based on snakiness and molting. Molting, regeneration. They redo themselves all the time. We can't do that. We don't. So there's the snake. Coming out of the snake, can you see a person? A big-nosed guy with fancy ear spools and a big old thing and nice jade necklace, and he's got a spear and a shield. But in front of him, floating in front of him, is a mask with a big giant eye and just some teeth. That represents the rain god.
Wait, the guy that's...
Chak. Chak is the name of it in the Mayan. C-H, usually A-A-C or K. Chak. That's the rain god. You'll see Tlaloc, that's the Central Mexican name for it, T-L-A-L-O-C. It's the same being. It's just different names. It's somebody, it doesn't tell us in the hieroglyphics quite clearly. We should, if we were Maya, we would know it, you know. These are cliff notes. The hieroglyphics are cliff notes. It could be the very first in his dynasty, the very primordial, you know, the very first king in his dynasty. And he's a great warrior. But what's important is that he is basically impersonating Chak. He is taking on the mask of Chak. He's the being behind the rain god. And so this is a claim that Shield Jaguar II is going to bring you rain. She saw in her vision, if she saw the rain god in the guise of, you know, somebody in their dynasty, then
Through their dynasty, rain will come.
rain, you know, this dynasty of kings brings you the rain and no fear. There's another one down here. So if they can If you spend, you're going to have to spend quite a lot of time on this monument. And there's a whole book on Yaxchilan by Carolyn Tate. T-A-T-E, Carolyn Tate. It's very detailed, but you can look up Lentil 25 and Lentil 24 and Structure 23 and Shield Jaguar. You can, you know, if you're willing to go there, you got the whole 9 yards in Carolyn Tate. This little bit of text is about her, same as before. This whole text is about the whole acceding to the throne and what Shield Jaguar is doing. What do you notice about the way that upper text goes? It's backwards. Very good. Why would it be backwards when she's having a vision?
To indicate that it's a vision?
That she's on the other side. It's as if you say to the kids, it's as if they wrote the writing on a piece of glass, and if you stand on this side, you read it, and if you stand on this side, it's backwards, the same as in a coffee shop.
So would
Because you're on the other side. It's almost a cliche, but it's wonderful. It's perfect because they're using the words and the images, and if you know shamanism, that's where she is.
It's wonderfully sophisticated to use, but it's
Yeah.
much more sophisticated than what we're seeing from 725 and any other culture.
That's right. And all they have to recognize is that it goes like that instead of the way it should go, the way it is in 24.
So I have 2 questions. So with that, would they be, so if you're in mind, you can read this. You can
If
read-
you're in the intelligentsia, you could read the hieroglyphs. But like the stuff you do with medieval, where you don't have to be able to read the Bible of the Poor, I know that's not, you know, the current thing, but there is something truth to that. It was visual, because it's an oral society. You can see, oh, look, there's the vision serpent, and there she is, and there's, chalk. You can get the concept. And even if you can't read the hieroglyphs, you can see that they're different from all the other times you've seen hieroglyphs.
Do the hieroglyphs go in that direction in other lentils about visions?
I haven't checked the other ones at the later ones. They're simpler than this. And you could look that up in the Carolyn Tate book. Even though they have a lower number, Lentil 15 is another vision scene, but it's much, much simpler.
Is her hieroglyph backwards as well? Down below.
Well, you see, when you've got it, I'd have to look on a bunch of other monuments to see whether they will fit them in where they need to fit them sometimes. So, and this is called a blood scroll. See this thing? It's kind of intertwined with the snake. This is just a big thing of blood, you know. It came from the blood. Losing the blood led to the thing. I'll see. I'll ask Carolyn if Lady Shocks are backwards too.
And then just to clarify, so these are recording him taking the throne, but they weren't installed until later. So they
Yes, they commemorate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's later. It's like a summation of his career, but with her taking a starring role. So it's her building. And then that's Lentil 26. That's him on the left wearing a fancy feathered jerkin. We call it a jerkin. It's like a little tunicky, vesty sort of thing. That's him. That's her. And she's handing him a jaguar head helmet that he's going to put on his head. His name has Balaam in it, jaguar, and he's going to go off to war for something. But there's not a lot of information in that one thing, and it's more eroded. It's still very, very beautiful. And just as an aside, the Maya royalty wears their hair up in a top knot, like a giant men and women like this, on the top of their head, because they are imitating corn silk. The silk coming out of the top of a corn cob. They are the people of the maize. They're bringing you the maize. They are the maize. So that's why you see all this kind of, and feathers and stuff coming out of their head. Big long green feathers. That's all about the corn plant.